Good evening, everyone. Welcome to my weekly live stream on Twitch, 8 o'clock, well, almost on the dot. Lost track of the time there a bit. So, whilst I chat to you, I'm just going to be getting my machine all set up to stream so I can show you my screen, because I've got all sorts of things on my screen at the moment that I don't want you all to see at the moment. So, I hope you're all well. Hope you're all good. If this is your first time joining, this is my weekly stream working on Node-RED code development, whether it's the Node-RED core or various bits around the outside. Previous weeks, I've mostly been focused on the Node-RED core. This week, I'm just concentrating whilst I type a couple of commands in my window. Then we are going to type into this window. What am I actually doing? We're going to be working... Well, there's a few different things to do. I haven't got something specific in the core, and I'll talk a bit about what I am doing in the core and why I'm not going to do more of that on tonight's stream. But what I am going to have a look at is, and if you look in the bottom corner of the screen down there, it should now have just changed. So the test helper. Now, I've just realised it's still saying starting soon on the screen, doesn't it? Let me fix that. There we are. There I am. Well, see, I was in such a rush, I unmuted myself without changing the scene. Yeah, well, here we are. Oh, what's going on with the light? Is it glitching? Is it just me, or is the screen flickering? I think it's just me. Sorry about this. As you might tell, regular viewers, I have reorganised my office today. So you've got a different view. I've basically turned everything round a bit so I can, so I'm looking in the right direction. Right, and because I've turned everything around a bit, my useful scripts that set up all my windows and put them all in the right position, I've actually swapped my two screens over. And my script that sets up all my screens ready for streaming has just stuck all of my screens and entirely on the wrong window because I've changed the layout. So, yes, okay, the piano's no longer visible. Or the piano previous. So basically, I've literally turned 90 degrees. So the piano was just here, and it's. I won't turn the camera around because what my view now is into the room, and it's a bit of a mess because I've cleared a whole bunch of stuff out to be able to turn the desk around, but that's a problem for another day. Bear with me, we're almost there. I've got that window in place, and I just need to find Atom so I can actually write some code. There it is. Right, so note to self, I need to fix my script to set up all my screens. Let me just have a look. So what are we looking at today? The Node-RED Node Test Helper. So this is a module we published to Npm that provides a bit of a test framework for nodes to make it easier to test nodes in a Node-RED runtime without, by running them in the Node-RED runtime, you can write test cases with flows and write code to test them. But we had an issue raised earlier today that they weren't... right, what's going on? That looks better. Yeah, we had an issue raised that they were not... that there's a usability problem with it. And I thought, well, that might make an interesting topic for a stream one week. And why not do it tonight? Right, I'm so nearly there. Let's move that window there because you don't need to see that. Let's get a new window here and pull up the source code of Node-RED Node Test Helper. So what have I been working on? Well, so I mentioned, I'll talk briefly about what I have been working on and why I'm not going to spend time on it tonight. So, go find don't make the mistake I made at the start. There's my screen. You can now see my screen. So one of the items we have for the 1.3 release, which wanted to get the beta out end of this week, I don't think that's realistic, but it's close, is this feature, the npm install function node. Essentially what this feature is to make it easier for the user to install and manage npm modules that the function node uses. The way you do that today is you manually install modules, and then you can use function global context to make a module available inside the function node. And that's good, that works, but if there are some circumstances where, well, we know it's a drag to have for a new user to have to edit their settings file, and there's some requirements about trying to make it easier for someone using Node-RED to be able to add extra modules into the function node and make use of them without having to fall back to the command line, edit their settings file, and that type of thing. So this pull request from contributors from Hitachi, they've been looking at this feature, adds in a bunch of stuff in the runtime for managing the modules, and a bunch of stuff around permissions and that sort of stuff. But then it also adds some UI to the function node. So if you're already familiar with the function node, which I'm sure many of you are, then we already had these tabs from the last release. The function node, with the function tab, which has the main function code, and we added in this setup and close tabs, which were code that runs when the node started and node stopped, respectively. And this PR adds in this new config tab, which is a first pass at a UI to help the user manage what npm modules this function node has access to. It's fine as a first pass, but it doesn't. Yeah, it needs some work to make it, I think, more usable, and some rework. And whilst I'm at it, I'm doing some rethinking about the function node UI in general, because when we added in these series of tabs, basically the function node is just getting squashed. If I pull up, I've not got Node-RED running at the moment, but in fact, yes, so this is the pull request. The main function code, it's getting squashed. It's getting less and less space in the window. So I've been playing around, or starting to play around, with just different possible layouts for the function node UI, trying to maximize the space we have for where you actually write code, trying to come up with a better user interface for managing the modules and all that sort of stuff. And basically it's just a lot of trial and error of playing around with the UI. There was some chat last week which we did follow up on around building a UI design, a Figma design kit for Node-RED UI, which would help to some degree with sketching out. But yeah, it's basically a lot of time spent just experimenting, shuffling things around, and it's not that interesting to have, I'm sure, for you guys just to watch me push things around, partly because I haven't got a clear sense on what the right answer is yet. So there's a lot of trial and error, and I think it's not necessarily not the best use of our time together. So that's what that was, and that's what I have been doing. But I mentioned what we're going to look at tonight is the Node-RED node test helper. And so this was an issue that got raised earlier today. Now, Node-RED test helper, there it is. Nope, no, there it's gone. Yeah, so it's a module that can it basically makes it easier to write test cases for nodes. So here we have an example test case for an example lowercase node, and you you load in the helper pointing it at your Node-RED installation because, well, for reasons, yeah, anyway, that's what you do. Don't worry why, I'm not going to get into that. You can then write test cases. This uses Mocha. That's just the test runner we use in Node-RED generally. It doesn't have to be Mocha, but this one is. And the basic model is, before each test is run, you start the helper, and after each one is you unload it and you stop the server. And then for each test case, you can create a cut down flow JSON. You then call helper.load, and the first argument you pass it is the module that provides the node you are testing. Then the flow JSON, and then the function that should get called once the runtime is running that flow. And then there's a bunch of other stuff, convenience methods to get hold of nodes that have been created and things like that. And it works really well. We use it in all the core node tests, and so much so that's why we published this out as its own module so that third-party nodes. But it hasn't had a lot of love. It kind of, because it works and it does all we need in the core, it's not something that we're constantly improving, constantly adding new features, because for the core nodes, it's largely feature complete. So yeah, you can see there is a bit of a long tail of issues that to consider. But the one that got raised today. Now, let me just go back to the example. When you're writing your test cases and you do something like this, the helper.load, this first argument I said has to be the node modules that provide the nodes that you're testing. Now maybe it might be more helpful at this point for me to pull up a real node. Right, I'll pull up a real node test case. So here we are in the Node-RED source tree. We go into test nodes, and then for every node we've got, you can go and find its test case. So I'm looking for one. Some of these get quite involved. I'm just looking for one that's going to be a good fit for for the issue that we're going to be trying to fix tonight. Let's just look at the change node. This might be a bad example, but so bunch of stuff, but the main thing is here you can see we require in the test node test helper. Let's make sure you can all still see and hear me, that's good. So let's just scan through. So you can see all of these. This is how we write each of the tests. Simple flow, we load it up, and then all these tests are just checking. Once it's loaded, it doesn't pass any messages. It gets the node object from the helper and it just examines to make sure it looks right. It gets more interesting when you start doing things. So here we've got a flow JSON that actually has two nodes in it. Let me pull this out to a separate file so I can format it so you can perhaps better see. Ooh. What? Oh, yeah, because it's JavaScript, it's not. What have I gone wrong? False road wires. For the life of me, I can't see what is wrong. Why is that not parsing? There. So you can see the flow JSON, it's got two nodes in this flow JSON. Can you see? That's a good question. Let's make it big, as you can see. So we have the change node, which is the node we are testing, and we call it change node 1. And its wires array, what it's wired to, is called helper node 1. And helper node 1 is down here, and it's of type helper. Now, what's important to know is that the way the test helper works is when it starts the runtime, it doesn't load a default palette of nodes at all. It's a completely blank runtime instance with no nodes whatsoever. So that's why here we have to when we call load, we give it the nodes it needs to add in the palette so it can run this flow. And this helper is a special, that's the one node we do stick in, which is kind of a nice utility node that just logs what messages are received. So you can create the node you want to test, wire it to a helper node, and then very typical pattern of we go and get a handle on the two nodes, the change node and the helper node. We set up a event listener, message listener on the helper node, and then we call the receive function of the change node, which is what gets called when it receives the message, pass in the message, and then in the on message or the on input handler of the helper node, we can check the message it receives looks like how it should. And that's great. That's the pattern that works. But the key point here is you have to load, the helper needs to be told about all the different node types so it knows how to load them, because it doesn't load the default palette. Now, so what's the issue? If we go back to the issues. Okay, so here's the issues. Users pointed out, quite reasonably, that so they want to create some test cases that use one or more of the default palette of nodes. In this instance, the catch node. And right now, the only way to make that work is, as I said, that first argument to helper.load is an array. Well, it's either one file or it's an array of modules for all the different modules that need loading into the runtime. And that's far from ideal, because if it's a third-party custom node, how exactly do they get hold of a reference to the core file? See, you can see here they've had to hard code in a relative path from their module into the core of Node-RED, which is not ideal, because that's then fragile, because if we change the internal layout, which doesn't actually affect any of our behavior, it would break their tests. So what we want to have a look at is it would be reasonable. Well, so most of the time tests are, here's the node under test and a helper node, and they're wired together. And the tests are, I inject a message into the node under test, and then I look at the messages the helper node receives. For most, that's fine. But if you want to test error cases, for example, an error case where the node logs an error that can be caught by a catch node, then you'd want to have a flow that includes a catch node, which is precisely what the reporter of this issue is trying to do. So whilst you wouldn't necessarily build a test flow that has lots of the core nodes in, it seems perfectly reasonable to make it easy to have a test flow that includes a catch node, perhaps a status node, and the complete node. Catch, status, complete. Is it those three? Yeah, those three. And that's what we're going to do tonight, is just look at how some of that works, how the test helper works. And in part, as you can see up here, we've got a bit of a backlog of issues and pull requests on this. Some of these pull requests actually go back a long time and may well be out of date. But the key bit is, if you're out there watching this, you're interested in getting more involved with the Node-RED project in some way, then actually the Node-RED node test helper might be a nice little self-contained thing that you can start playing with, understand how it works, and chat to us about what else could that have to make it even more useful. Right, so how are we going to go about working on this? So first things first, I don't even know if I have, yes I do have Node-RED node test helper installed locally. Let's just make sure I've got the latest. No, I didn't. Cool. Well, I do now. So there we go. So I've got Node-RED Node Test Helper installed locally. What I'm going to do, how am I going to do this? So we need a nice and convenient way to actually test Node-RED Node Test Helper. And I am going to do that. How am I going to do that temporarily? Ordinarily, I'd have a standalone Node-RED Node module that's already set up using the test helper. Because I haven't prepared for tonight, I can't think off the top of my head whether I actually have one of those nodes installed locally or not to play with. So we're going to do it with a core. I think we're going to try it with the core nodes. And what we've got at the moment is package.json of the main Node-RED project points to Node-RED Node Test Helper. What I'm going to do is temporarily npm install Node-RED Node Test Helper here. So rather than use the prepackaged version, I'm telling it to use my local copy so I can edit the local copy and work that way. Oh my. That failed. What happened? What happened to that? Right, okay. Excuse me whilst I go and fix up. Oh, Node Test Helper. What's going on in here? Okay, that worked. Now let's... Steve, inject or delay node so we can see how you handled timed events. Well, yeah, we can have a look at that. Rename. Sometimes node npm just really annoys me. Has that even worked? Node modules. See, this was meant to be the easy bit. This was meant to be me just setting up my environment. So where on earth? Okay, that's not worked. Oh, why do I... You know, if it doesn't work, just keep running the same command and run it louder until it starts working. Right, so no such rename. Okay, but why on earth is this an issue? Path. Okay. Why on earth have we got Babel involved? No such file directory. Oh man. There is no staging. Right, so at this point we stop messing around. We do we just blow that away, and then we do manually soft link it. npm won't be happy, but I'll tidy that up after you guys have gone. Node-RED Node Test Helper. Right, now let's see if that's worked. So I should be able to run a test on the core, one of the core nodes. Let's have a look. Core function, do change node, or yeah, change node. There. Okay, I think that's working, and I think let's just make sure Of course, I haven't got the code in Atom to start developing against it yet. So let's open that up. And what I'm just going to do, just to make sure, new version, because sometimes you can't do better than a simple console.log new version. Cool. Right, we're set. We are set. What we're going to do is we're going to create let's go. Right, this is going to really confuse me. I've got too many Atom windows already. I've only got 2 of them, but that's too many. So I'm going to bring test helper down here. So we're all in the one window, so you can get just as lost as I do. Changing it. Now, you'll forgive me, Steve, I'm not going to delve into the inject and delay node. No, I'm not going to delve into the inject or delay node. What I am going to do is I want to find a node that calls node.error. So let's think what nodes call node.error that you can use a catch node with. That I suspect one of the file nodes must. Do shout out if you have a favourite node that calls node.error. Yeah, well, of course the function node does. That's the obvious answer, Steve. But you're quite right. Yeah, okay. HTTP request node, yeah. I just want a simple one that I can just inject a message and guarantee an error. Let's see. See, that's an inject parse invalid JSON. Well, trouble. Does that trigger the catch node? That's what we want. We want something that's going to trigger the catch node. Steve, you're quite right. Let's just do the function node. Let's just go grab one of these examples. Okay. Now what I'm going to do at this point, for convenience, I'm just going to comment out all of the function node tests. And we're just going to focus on, that's the test case I've just copied and pasted. And I'm just going to leave that intact. I'm just going to say should do something with the catch node. Okay, so what have we got? Let's first, we're going to hand create, because what's better than, well, I suppose I could go fire up node red and create a, well, that's how I probably should do is fire up node red, create a real test case flow and use that as the JSON. But I'm just going to do things manually for now. What we're going to have is a function node wired to test helper node 2 and 2. We're going to have another test helper, call that node 3. And then we're going to have a catch node. I'll call that catch, because I'm not that imaginative right now. And in fact, what I will do at this point is go grab node red, drop in a catch node. Going to catch error small nodes. Yeah, well, in fact, we're not going to modify its configuration. Just going to copy it and drop it in here. Okay, so we're going to give it an ID of catch node. Got a type Z. We don't care about for the test helper. Don't care about name. Scope we're going to leave as null. Yeah, we're going to leave its other properties, and we're going to get rid of its x and y. And its y as array, we want this catch node to be wired to our n3, the second. In fact, I'm going to rename my nodes. I'm going to call func node as the function, and then we're going to have we're going to call it the good node, which is where the function node will send its message, and we're going to have the bad node, which is where the catch node will send its message. Let's just, so catch node is wired to bad node, function node is wired to good node. Is this making sense? Have you ever created your flows by manually writing their JSON? And rather than a node.send, we're going to call node.error. This, oh, but we're going to, this is an error. Okay, so all this function node will do is it will never pass a message to its output. It's just going to log an error, which the catch node should catch. Okay, we are going to minify that. Oh, why? That's all valid. What have I done wrong? What have I done? Oh, okay. Yeah, it wasn't all valid. Now it is. Okay, so then we've got a simple test flow. And I renamed all my nodes rather helpfully. So we've got, we had func node, and we had catch node, and what did I call the other two? Good node and bad node. So I think this whole process of how you write test cases for nodes is still a little clunky. It's something that would be nicer to be able to do more seamlessly in the Node-RED editor, but I think we're some way away from that. There is a whole set of plans to be able to create test cases for flows in the editor, something I really hope we get to, get to in the first half of this year. It's one of the major items this year, so I'm really keen to get on with that, as well as the flow debugger and all the rest. So we are going to add bad node, which is the one that receives the message from the catch node, should receive our message. Now I'm not going to swear about, I'm not going to try and do test-driven development by telling you now what that message should look like. No, in fact it should, because it should be the message we pass the function node. Yeah, we're passing the message to the function node with a payload of foo and a topic of bar. Bad node, which is wired to the catch node, should receive exactly that message, but it should have property error because it's been passed to node.error, and we'll worry about exactly what property that should have in a minute. Okay, so now let's run this test case. And see where we get to. And it fails, which we wanted it to fail. Why did we want this to fail? We wanted this to fail because in my flow, I have the catch node, but I haven't told the helper where to find the catch node. Now, one hacky way of doing it, because I'm inside the Node-RED core codebase, I can cheat, because we've got utility functions inside the core test case material that helps me resolve files. So I'm going to say my catch node module is in at Node-RED nodes core and nodes core common 25 catch. So by passing that in as well as the function node, this test case should now pass. And it has. So the test case is now passed because I've loaded up the catch node module and given it to the test helper saying, here, you need this for this test case. And there's the console.log. You can see we've got the error property. And so for the completeness, we can say message.error should have a property of message, and its value should be whatever I put into the function. Let's go find that. I said this is an error. And there's a number of other properties the error thing has. Oh, yeah, that's right. It has a source telling us where it's come from. See, at this point, we're no longer necessarily testing the function node. We're testing the runtimes and the catch node behavior. But it doesn't hurt to sort of belt and braces. Let's just make sure it's got the source property is, what did I call it? Func node. And there's other stuff, but I'm not going to worry about the other stuff. So, okay. You may say, job done, well done. But the crux of the issue is this line of code here, where I have had to know that I want to use the catch node, and I've had to effectively inject it into the test helper. And I benefit from the fact that, as I say, we've got this test utils module, which is part of our test material in the core, and it just knows how to map paths into the source tree of our source repository. That all works because we're inside the same repository. The problem comes when you're down in the test helper code. How can it do that? So finally, this is what we're going to look at. Node-RED Node test helper is just effectively it's just one big JavaScript file that does a whole bunch of work to try and do the right thing, mocking up different bits of the runtime, tries to avoid the overhead of starting the whole runtime every time, doesn't worry about file system storage, all that sort of stuff. It's sort of a purely in-memory temporary runtime instance. And okay, so here is the load function where test node gets passed in. And what do we do with test node? So effectively what we do with test node is, if it's an array or if it's just a single thing, we assume it's a function because if you're familiar with what nodes look like, the module they export is a function. So all the test has to do is invoke that function, passing in a handle to the test runtime, not the real runtime, the test runtime, which will be the same as this red object, and then that node somewhere in its depths will register itself with that runtime. So the question here is, what can we do in the Node-RED test helper to recognize the types in the flow? And if a flow references the catch node, the status node, or the complete node, do the work to get those loaded into the runtime automatically without the user having to provide them. Yeah. So what do we do first? First thing we need to know is, does this test flow include okay, sorry, I'm jumping ahead a few steps, and there's a gotcha that, yeah, there's a Something else we're going to have to check, but we'll worry about that in a minute. What we're going to do is we initialized the runtime, we registered. So here you can see we register our special helper node, which is just in fact, it's a completely vanilla node that does nothing, but it's useful. What we're going to do no, not that point, down at the point when we start loading modules. Here we go. So test flow is what contains the flow we're testing. What we're going to do is we're going to iterate over test flow. And then say if n.type equals, and we're just going to worry about the catch node for now. So we know that the flow under test includes the catch node. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to take out catch node module. I'm going to stop passing it in because we want to be able to start to automatically detect that we need to include it. So if having scanned the test flow, we've found a node of type catch, so we know that's one we need to load. So at this point, we need to go find the real catch node module and load it. Right. Okay, that's the comment. Now we actually have to write the code. Where do we get it from? So bear in mind, right now, this code is sitting inside the test helper. And we don't know where the Node-RED files are relative to the Node-RED test helper files. There's a number of different ways, depending how the node has its dev dependency set up, depending if they are, in fact, all of our core tests are, the layout is different yet again to how we resolve it. But that's work that the test helper already deals with. That it has to try and figure out where everything is. So it's slightly gorpy code, but it's essentially what all these if statements are doing. Is it's looking at all the different common cases for how this module, where this module could be installed relative to the Node-RED module, and it just basically searches them. And so far, this seems to be, I think, these two different cases. In fact, there are 3 cases to deal with, seem to work. But the key thing with all of this is, at this point, by the time we get to here, we know that prefix is the path to the root of the Node-RED package source tree. So what we can do is hard code up here. I'm going to say this dot node modules, for want of a better name, catch is I'm just going to grab one of these. So this has done the work, as I say. So prefix, all the hard work's been done to work out where the Node-RED source tree is. We're going to load in the catch node function, which is in @Node-RED nodes. In fact, I had it. Let's not type it out again. Let's copy it from here. Yeah, nodes common 25 catch. At some point, we might get rid of all those numbers in the file names, but a bit of a legacy holdover from when. Well, in fact, they still play a role. They control what order the nodes get loaded in, so what order they appear in the palette. So they do still play a part. Okay, we're just going to do the catch node for now. I've called it underscore node modules for want of a better name. So down here, if we find that type, we are going to Cool. Ooh, yeah, this is still in scope. We are going to invoke the catch nodes function, which will then get it to register with our test runtime. Okay. I think that's going to work. Before I do that, okay, I'm going to comment that out. And I'm just going to show you, because I removed the catch node from the test, when I run this, it should fail. And it doesn't fail prettily. I mean, that's going to be a separate problem to tackle. If this could be a much more graceful failure to help you realize it's failing because it doesn't know about that node type. And maybe we'll come to that if we've got a bit of time in a minute. But now if I comment in this new line and rerun that test, the test passes. Awesome. I was 90% confident that was going to pass that first time, but I was also prepared to be surprised. Good. Job done. Shall we all go home? Well, the gotcha I thought of just now is, let's go back to this test and let's add back in, because this is something you have to do today. There will be test cases out there today that have already solved this for themselves somehow and will already explicitly pass in the catch node module. Now, what's going to happen? Pop quiz. What happens? We are passing in the catch node module in this array, plus we have a flow that references it. So having made the code change we've made, let me just tidy up so I don't get lost. Having made the change we've just made, well, we're going to discover the catch node once and then automatically load its module. And then we're going to load it again. Answers on a postcard. Oh, Steve, node conflict. Well, under the covers, I suspect so. And in fact, but I didn't know how that was going to surface in terms of, given how badly we surfaced the missing node type. Sure enough, catch already registered. So what can we do? We need to avoid this. Basically, we need to deduplicate somehow. Now, we either do it up here, or we do it down here. Which way around do we do it, do we think? Okay, what I'm going to do, at the moment, because we support passing in just a single node or an array, and we have this if statement, so right now we've got two different code paths to worry about. I'm just going to neaten this up by saying, if test node is not an array, we're going to make test node an array. At which point, we can get rid of that else clause. So we force it to be an array. And now at this point, we've only got one place to worry about this logic. And what we're going to do is add a preloaded core modules. We're going to make a set. Don't use sets nearly enough. And then, because we've done that, we're going to preloaded core modules.add this node modules.catch. So we're going to stick that function into a set, and then down here we're going to say, if not preloaded core modules has, I think is the right function for a set, fn. So if we haven't preloaded it, we can load it. So let's run the test. And it's worked first time. Look at that. I didn't even have to check the docs for the set object. So that's coolness. That's good progress. We've got a basic template now for how we can preload modules. At the moment, we've only got catch, and it's all a little hard-coded. I did mention, there's a few we would like in here. So we're going to have catch, status, and done, complete, done or complete node. I tell you what, the whole async messaging API, which led to us adding the complete node in 1.0 or just before 1.0, had been discussed and kicked around for probably a year of various different discussions. And one of the stickiest points was, what do we call the complete node? Is it the finished node? Is it the done node? Is it the whatever node? And anyway, we ended up with the complete node. Still doesn't fill me with joy, but as they say, naming things is hard. So we want, this is me just looking, we're on common, so we want 24 complete, which is complete. Catch status complete. So we want 24 complete, and status is a 25. Of course it is. Why wouldn't it be stated? Okay, so catch status and complete will preload, or we won't preload. We will test for them and preload if they are needed. So then, rather than hardcode catch down here, we're going to say if this node, if the core modules we know about, has own property whatever n.type is. So then we will invoke it, whatever it is. And then we will stick it in. Cool. So now go find the real core node module and load it. That's good. So we've removed any specific reference to the catch node down here. And in terms of any fragile handling of paths, it's now limited to all of the fragile path handling is in one place, shall we say, in this file. So yeah, there will be a bit, if in the future we move things around, there will be a case of doing a bit more, adding some more checks based on what version of Node-RED are we testing against to make sure we look up the right paths, but that's just all part of the fun. Yeah, so let's just double check that still passes. Cool. We're done. That's all I wanted to do for this. I hope that makes sense. So we basically building in awareness of these nodes. Now, there is something to be said for what other core nodes might be useful. At this point, I'm not going to make this list longer than it need to be. I think catch status and complete is probably the right thing to do if you want to test your node's functionality fully, because logging an error, updating your status, or calling node.done are things your node should be doing properly, so you should be testing if you are writing complete test cases for your nodes. And it's the easiest way to verify those things is to create the flow and use those nodes to catch them, to catch those events, which aren't just message events. As I say, I've no doubt there'll be lots of stuff in here that would be nice to make certain types of testing of nodes more accessible, but this is what we've got, and this does for us today. Cool. Right, let's finish the job. We are going to bump node test helper to version 0.2.6. As we're here, it never hurts. Let's just check out what's the state of our node's dependencies. So for that, we can run npm outdated. See what npm makes of it. So Mocha is down a major level. Semver 732 can bump to 734. I know we can safely do that given the very limited way we use it. Cinnamon has gone up to 924 from 902, so Cinnamon, that's a safe change. Supertest has bumped from 4 to 6. Well, it's 2 major versions. At this point on a Monday evening, I'm not going to delve in. And Mock has gone up a major version. I think that's fine actually to just do, but again, I'm not going to do it here and now. But I will. That's a good point actually. Npm Test. Interesting. So our Npm Test of this, I was going to do an Npm publish for you all live, but running Npm, all right, let's just run Npm install, make sure we've got the latest of everything. I just noticed Npm Test is failing. Oh no. Okay, why is that failing? Let's have a look. What version of this must be running against a version of Node-RED? No. Yeah, when this runs, oops, right. No, that's the wrong one. I'm this package.json. Dev dependencies. Okay, it hasn't got. Interesting. So this doesn't actually have any references to Node-RED itself. So how would the tests work? How does this work at all? So it doesn't actually. Right, so find runtime path. I think what's failing is it's failing to find the runtime path. I think. Or am I misinterpreting what's going on here? All the tests are failing. That's never a good sign. Let's just focus on one at a time. Okay, that's blowing up. Why is this blowing up then? So we've got helper should have property credentials. Okay, well it's got helper, but it doesn't have credentials. Let's have a look. Helper is whatever's returned by module.exports. It's returning a new test helper instance in its constructor, and it calls this.init. Forgive me whilst I just bounce around a bit. I'm trying to get... or is it doing stuff statically that is tripping us up? Let's stick in a... We run it, and runtime path is that printout there, undefined? Yeah, okay. So runtime path is undefined, so it's failing to find the core runtime, which isn't ideal. And so find runtime path. Yeah, so this is the code I was referring to before. It does its work to try and find Node-RED. What, out of interest, what does... Yeah, see, it doesn't... By itself, this module doesn't pull in Node-RED even as a dev dependency, which it perhaps should. But what we can do... these are the different cases it does when it's trying to find the Node-RED code base. So first up, it scans where are we, and if we find we're actually inside Node-RED itself. So what does that mean? That means you've got that is effectively what I have, sort of. No, it's not what I have. It's if it finds itself in so here I've got the Node-RED directory. Is that any better? Make it bigger, make it smaller. Here I'm in Node-RED, which is the Git. So this is the source tree of the Node-RED module itself, of the Node-RED project. If I go into node modules there, then somewhere in there is Node-RED node test helper. That's what case 1 here is. Read package up basically works its way up the source tree of the file you're in to find the first package.json. So that's case 1. That's not the case of what we've actually got here, because where we are actually running stuff is, okay, I've got in my source tree, code Node-RED is like the GitHub organization. It's got all the different projects in. So I've got the Node-RED Git repository extracted here, and I've got the Node-RED node test helper extracted here. They are sat next to each other. So in case 2, Node-RED is resolvable from here, so I can just call require. That would work if I had Node-RED list as a dev dependency, and that's what a lot of third-party nodes would do. So that's why it might just be enough to add Node-RED as a dev dependency. Here's one, Node-RED is installed alongside Node-RED node test helper. So that's where you have, yeah. Why? No. Okay, I'm going to add case 4. Node-RED and Node-RED node test helper are Git repos sat alongside each other. And how do we test for that? Well, we can try out. Oh, it's hacky as hell, but we're going to say let's just try seeing if from where we're sat, can we require because where are we? We are sat in index.js, which is the top level. So we're going to go up. Bear with me. We're going to do, yeah, this is nasty, but so we're going to go up level, then we're going to go into the Node repo, and then we're going to hopefully find its package.json. And if we successfully find it, then we can then we want this. We're going to assume, yeah, there's a bunch of assumptions here, but I think this is I think that will do it. Let's have a look. Node-RED node test helper. Yay, test pass. Cool. So that's goodness. So that means I can actually run the test locally. Plenty of different scenarios. And this is part of this is one of the challenges of trying to extract the test helper, which was originally just in the core, into its own module. You then realise that everyone wants to run it slightly differently. So we did npm updated. Have we bumped the version number? What have we done? So we've fixed all up that. We've bumped to version 2.6 and bumped some dependencies. I'm happy with that. So we're going to say, what's our commit? Optionally preload catch status complete nodes in test cases. Fixes issue number 48. Push that up. And once we're here, we can just run the npm publish. Good. So that's version 0.2.6 of Node-RED Node Test Helper. Yeah, so a thing to do, but for a whole variety of reasons, I'm not going to do this instant. Is Node-RED Node Test Helper. Okay, we've got the carry, so we can bump that to 0.2.6 when we do our next release. But I'm not going to make that change now because it will conflict with a bunch of other stuff I've got going on. Because as you can see, I've already got a change. Oh no. Yeah, let's bump it. We can do that safely. Yeah, because we have Node-RED 1.2.8 coming. Coming tomorrow morning, in fact. Tomorrow morning? Maybe tomorrow morning. We need to get it out. Should we do it now? No, I'm not going to do it now. It's all ready to go. Except I've got to do the change log and I've got to do the forum blog post and yada yada, which is not the most thrilling for you guys to watch me do. But yeah, 1.2.8 comes up tomorrow. It's got a couple of security related fixes in that we may even get CVEs assigned for, which is a bit of fun. Well, it's not fun. Important security things. The fun bit is learning how to get CVEs, but GitHub have made that quite easy to do, or so it seems. And yeah, something we're grateful for the community who, when they find security issues, they follow our, they go and read our security.md, which just asks you, don't raise an issue if you find a security issue. Email us so we can deal with it responsibly and privately, and deal with the public disclosure in a sensible fashion. Yeah, something we haven't had to do a lot of. There've been the odd issue, but yeah, no, it's a. Looks like there's a. My brain has gone blank on the proper term. There's a team of people in. I don't know if they're in China or Japan. I should know. Either way, it doesn't matter. There's a team of guys who have been playing around with the Node-RED admin API and have found a couple issues. So, yeah, they'll be fixed up in 1.2.8. Right. That's it. That's for tonight. I hope that was interesting. A bit of something different. Yeah, testing nodes is a really interesting topic. And like I said, if anyone has written their own node, maybe you've used the test helper, maybe you've worried about how do I write tests, then yeah, test helper is a great way to get involved with the Node-RED project, make it even better to use, more intuitive to use. As I say, I'm sure there's gaps in what it helps you test. It covers the bases for our core nodes, but that doesn't mean it covers every case for every user. So yeah, it's important. in terms of testing in general, we have unit tests for individual files in Node-RED, and I've talked about those before. We did the whole session on our code coverage stats and fixing the reporting of the stats. We still have got a long way to go to improve the coverage. And we've got tests for all of our nodes, and that's great. There's a whole nother class of test which the test helper may or may not help with, and that's more functional tests. So that's it would be really cool to get to the point where we just have literally a folder of just dozens of flows that the test runner just runs each one in turn and is able to determine if it passes or not. I mean, that does kind of link into the test framework we have for flows, but there's more functional tests of the runtime itself we need to start writing, which do more end-to-end system tests of Node-RED. I mean, the unit test coverage is good, but there's the integration testing of, okay, each individual component does what it claims. Do they still do what they claim once you start joining them together? Now, I think we rely on manual testing a bit too much to catch some of those more subtle issues that the individual unit tests perhaps can't. So, anyway, more to come. It's going to be an interesting year. There's some really interesting stuff coming. More than just the fact that I've moved my desk around, so you get a different view. So thanks for joining. I'm not going to do a full 2 hours like I did last week. I think I'm going to wrap things at this point. So thanks for joining. Thanks for joining the chat. As ever, if you're watching on the YouTube archive, do subscribe. New video every week. Do leave a comment. Do come and say hi on Slack or on Twitter. Always happy to chat about stuff. If this has inspired you to get more involved or interested in how you get more involved, come chat on Slack. One thing I will say I've done, it was one of those things I don't yet fully know how I'm going to publicise it more, is I've set up Calendly. Anyway, setting up Node-RED office hours. So what this is going to be is essentially anyone just can come and on each Friday pick a slot. I think I've limited it to no more than 4 on any one day. We'll see how it goes. But you can effectively just book a 25-minute chat with me if there's something particularly you want to get some one-on-one web conference video chat with me. Then I thought this would be a nice way that people can just book some time with me if there's something they want to chat about. Not necessarily, not looking for this to become me providing remote support and remote debugging of problems. Although if that's what people really want, then I'm sure I can see what I can do. The forum's great for getting to the bottom of problems. This is more if you want, just want to talk through perhaps more detailed stuff, or get into more of the finer detail of Node-RED stuff. Maybe you just want to find out more about particular things, and you just want to have, maybe you just want to have a chat with me. Who knows? So for you watching, you can see the URL. I will publicize it somehow, and we'll see how it goes. But of course, don't have to do this. Just ping me on Slack if you ever want to have a chat on any of this stuff about Node-RED. Like I say, always interested to talk to the community, find out what you're doing with Node-RED, what questions you have, get your feedback. Anyway, there we go. I suspect it's the same reason I'm doing Twitch. I'm sat in this room a lot, not really having, I don't do very many calls during the week. Is this just my way to get more human contact? I don't know. But if you want to have a chat, please do. And with that, I'm going to try and find the buttons because they've all moved, because I've moved my monitors around, and somewhere over here I can click a button and it will be the end. So have a good rest of your days, have a good evening, and see you next time. Bye.